Fredman Wilson thought that Charlie was going to trample on his roots, and his face was pale and frightened. Even though he still feels that Charlie is a stinky cock who can kill himself by hooking, but right now, if Charlie really stepped on it, he would be completely useless. Turning his head, even if he cuts Charlie 1,000 knives, what's the use? The roots will still become a puddle of mud. As a man, especially a man who is rich and does not lack women, he must not lose his roots anyway. How is this different from taking your own life? So he hurriedly begged for mercy. Brother Wade. Brother Wade. If you have something to say, you can say it. Charlie hung his toes and asked with a smile, why? Afraid? With a cold sweat on his face, Fredman Wilson nodded and said, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please, your lord, ignore the villain's faults, and spare me this time. What Fredman Wilson thinks is that a big man can bend and stretch, first admit that he can keep his roots, and then find someone to come and kill Charlie directly in return for today's deep hatred. Charlie doesn't know what he's thinking. At this time, he is just like a cat playing with a mouse. He smiled and said, okay, since you begged me to forgive you, then call me Dad to listen. The people at the scene were scared and stupid. Is this guy too cruel? Let Chairman Fredman Xiao Xiao call him a young father? Is he tired of living? What is he? Fredman Wilson's face was also a little uncontrollable at this time. With so many people watching, let him be called father? His age is more than enough to be his father. If he really called his father today, wouldn't it be laughed at by thousands of people? However, right now his life route is controlled by Charlie. No matter how big the background is, it is far from being able to quench his thirst. Just when he didn't know what choice to make, Charlie smiled and said, oh, I didn't expect Chairman Wilson to be so kind, okay. In this case, then I will fulfill you. In my heart and your life roots say goodbye. After all, lift his foot and step on it. Fredman Wilson's frightened soul dissipated, and he wetted his crotch, and a large puddle of yellow liquid leaked under his butt. He cried and said, Dad. I'm wrong, Father. Please spare the roots under your feet. After saying this, Fredman Wilson wept bitterly. What a mistake. Why didn't he bring the bodyguard in? If the bodyguards followed up, how could he be so humiliated by Charlie? He vomited blood early and let him call himself father. At this moment, deep in his heart, he already wanted to take Charlie off. And his dad immediately caused countless people's exclamation at the venue. The chairman of the future company group was beaten by a young man and peed his pants. He still called him father? This is simply too shocking. Seeing this, Wendy shouted at Charlie angrily, Charlie. Even Fredman Wilson, dare to move, this time you are over. You are dead. Fredman Wilson also felt ashamed and indignant. He looked at Charlie and asked, are you satisfied now? Can you let me go? Charlie nodded and said with a smile, okay. Since Fredman Wilson can bend and stretch and call me father obediently, then, of course, I have to fulfill my promise and will never step on your roots. Fredman Wilson finally breathed a sigh of relief. But in the next second, Charlie sneered and said, but well, your roots will definitely be useless in the future. I think, instead of letting you stare at a mound of rotten meat every day in the future, it is better to let you stare. An intact but unusable root of grief is more interesting. Fredman Wilson didn't understand, and subconsciously asked, what do you mean? Charlie smiled and said, it's okay, I won't step on your roots, but I will abolish it. After speaking, Charlie tapped his toes gently on his lower abdomen, and a breath of real energy flowed out along the toes. Since having the 9 profound heaven scriptures, he has grasped the desire to control true chi. This trace of true chi has directly cut off Fredman Wilson's nerves, making it impossible for him to exert any male power. However, Fredman Wilson didn't know what Charlie meant when he gently tapped on himself. He also couldn't notice at this time that he had lost the ability of a man. In the future, he could only look at an undamaged root, and then beat his chest against the unusable thing. Right now, he was just extremely angry and terrified, eager to flee here, and then brought in the bodyguards outside, directly beat Charlie half to death, and then crushed his roots. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth and asked, "Can I go?" Charlie axed back, "Who are you asking?" Fredman Wilson said angrily, "Of course I am asking you." Charlie axed again, "Then who am I?" Fredman Wilson's face suddenly became extremely ugly. He was a smart man. He knew what Charlie meant. He wanted to call him father again. D*MN, this humiliation, I can't bear it. So he said angrily, "Charlie, don't go too far. Just now you said that as long as I call you Dad, you will spare me. Why are you turning back?" Charlie smiled and said, "Because I am shameless." After speaking, Charlie stared at him and said coldly, "If you don't bark now, then I might have stepped on it accidentally. In that case, don't blame me." Fredman Wilson was completely scared, gritted his teeth, and said, "Okay. My name is—" In his opinion, since he has already yelled once, his face has been lost, and it doesn't matter if he yells again. The key is how to let Charlie temporarily let him go and give himself a chance to go out and call someone. So he pleaded again, "Dad, please let me go." Charlie nodded in satisfaction. "My dear son is so good. Okay, Dad forgives you this time. Get out of here." Upon hearing this, Fredman Wilson hurriedly rushed out of the distance and ran out with Wendy.